Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live Move Crush Count episode. I am your host, Scott Joseph. Move Crush Count is proudly sponsored by J&L Marketing, the digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competition so you do not have to outspend them. Check out J&L Marketing today after the show, of course, as always, and discover how their innovative approach is going to help you move the crowd, crush your competition, and count the money. Excited about today's guest. He's a former president, CMO, an entrepreneur. He's got 40 years of executive leadership experience in literally every aspect of business. Please welcome to Move Crush Count, Roy Osing.
Hey, Scott. Nice to be here, mate.
Man, great to see you. And you're coming all the way up from Vancouver, Canada, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Rainy Vancouver this morning. Usual.
Well, it could be snow.
It was snow.
So, yeah, we're just obviously next week is our Derby week here in Louisville. So the weather is trying to change for the better. It looks like it's going to give us a little window. So
good luck with that.
We'll pass some of that up your way here in another month.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We've got a lot to cover today. In a nutshell, we're going to talk our way through the audacious, unheard of ways, all right, that you used to take a startup to over a billion, that's billion in sales. So I am eagerly anticipating these answers and guiding us through how to get this done, because I don't think there's any entrepreneur that wouldn't want to make that, or small business owner want to experience that type of growth. You all right diving in?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. And by the way, follow Roy all over his social content. I've had the honor the last few months of doing that in all the different platforms. What platforms are you on, Roy?
Well, I do the usual ones, really. I do Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter,
Yep.
and Facebook. So the usual stuff. Yep. Try to constantly talk about my stuff, because people learn in different ways. And so what I like to do is just constantly come at the material from a different angle, and hopefully that resonates with folks.
What I like about your content is a very no nonsense approach to it all. So it's not just you're not really promoting. I mean, you're educating. I mean, there's nobody that's not going to look at a post of yours and be like, "Huh, that makes sense," and then take it from there and learn how to integrate it. So I like it. What inspired you to take such audacious moves? And then how do you even define what does that mean to you? When you talk about that.
Yeah, I use the word audacious for me. It means several things. It means non-traditional. It means breakaway. It means bold. It means courageous. It means the ability to absorb a great deal of pain as you try and implement some of these things. And quite frankly, I wasn't really inspired to do this. It was born out of necessity. I mean, I was given the job of leading an early stage business in the internet space, and trying from a monopoly telco. You got to understand that the context was coming out of a monopoly telephone company into a highly competitive internet business. And I was given the president's job, and they said, "Roy, go build this thing." Okay. And so there was no way we could do this by continuing to be what we were in the past, right? Like common, traditional, sort of union bound, et cetera, et cetera. We had to break away from all that. And so as I reflected on the sorts of things that we did, relative to everything that was going on, it was more than audacious. It was audaciousness. I mean, it is audaciousness on steroids. But when we talk about this, you'll see that it's not complicated. This stuff is so simple. And the thing that drives me insane, Scott, is nobody does it, because I don't think they think it's complicated enough. And if it's not complicated, how can it work? And so I had to do this in order to grow this business. Simple, small, breakaway, audacious moves over time that actually created this. And I still get goosebumps, man. To build a business, we didn't know it was going to be $1 billion until we actually got there in annual sales. I mean, it was just such a rewarding journey.
I don't have the numbers. I could do a quick search, the either on ChatGPT or Google and find out. I'd love to know the percentages. Gosh, it's got to be less than 2% ever hit $1 billion in sales.
Yeah, I don't know. That business today is 18 billion. Okay, so we created a run rate that I like to think sort of spurred the business on in its own way to even be greater. So 18 billion from one, over a period of over a decade, but still just chugging along. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to me achievement that was literally created by while the organization was between 8 and 10,000 people. So it was a big organization to actually create that sort of momentum that delivered that sort of result.
What were some of the audacious moves you made? And then it's not easy going in and making big changes. You said we had to get out of this common. So, especially in an organization this big. So, this is a two-part question. So, what were some of the moves that you initially did that you would say you look back and you were like, or maybe even felt them at the time and they were risky? All right. And then you took some chances. And then at the same time, especially being the new president, how did you get the courage to make those calls?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is, I mean, people be thinking that the audacious thing connotes like silver bullets and grandiose things, and that's not what it is. It's a whole bunch of small, relevant things done with consistency that over time delivers results. And I'm not saying it's easy to do even the small things because you're breaking away from a huge train, right, of a past culture. But here's an example of the simplicity. I created, first of all, I was highly execution focused. Okay, if we can't execute it, I don't want to talk about it. I am not, yeah, I got a left brain, but I like to work out of my right brain, and I like to execute first, plan second. A lot of people think that's ridiculous, and I'll explain why it's not, why it actually got us to $1 billion. And so, being execution focused, I had to come up with plans and programs that would allow me to do that. Okay, so everything that I did was highly related to making it easier to execute the strategy, because if we could execute the strategy, we could perform better and eventually got to $1 billion. You had a question?
Yeah, I did. I'm sitting there writing stuff down from what you just said. I love your comment. If we can't execute it, I don't even want to talk about it. It reminded me, we got a president here. It's why I had to get out of the day to day. It's because I'm a visionary guy. All right. And this is going to be good for our audience because I think there's a lot of small business owners and leaders. There's this mix. Very, very rarely do you see great vision and great execution in the same person. I think that it doesn't mean it can't happen. But I can tell you for me, like the execution part, by the way, I demand that it gets done right. But I just don't want to be involved in that process to make sure it gets done right.
Well, let me tell you. Okay, that's interesting because for me, I'm a practical guy, and the only reason we got to $1 billion is we had a plan that was just about right. You see, because I'm not a believer in the imperfection of anything. In fact, I don't believe in visionary, anyways. Okay, audacious leadership is about getting the plan just about right, executing the hell out of it better than anybody else, and learning as you go. And part of that for me, getting back to what was an example of an audacious move, it's what I call cleanse the internal environment. Okay, so if I can cleanse, what do I mean by cleanse the internal environment? I mean get rid of the things, right, that prevented people from doing their job. Get rid of the things that prevented us to engage with the customer on their terms. Okay, and so I came up with a couple of little ideas. One was called kill dumb rules. Okay, a dumb rule is a rule that just pisses people off. Okay, it makes no sense to customers. They don't want to engage with you on those terms. And so all it does is create disloyalty, right? And so I created this program called Dumb Rules, Kill Dumb Rules. And I would show up in the workplace with a white t-shirt with dumb rules written on it with a big X on it. And they'd say, oh, here comes Roy with his dumb rules t-shirt on, right? And so what we did is we had a very, very specific program of weeding out the things that really annoyed customers and either getting rid of them, killing them, or otherwise changing them, right, to make them more palatable, because there were some rules we could for legal reasons or whatever, we couldn't change. So that was a huge success. What did it do? Go to the frontline people, ask them. They tell you, you get rid of the rules. All of a sudden, right, the viscosity of the inside motion of the machine gets improved, if I can use that term. I've never used that before, by the way. So that's a nice description, right? Improving viscosity.
We
Improving
have a
viscosity.
frequent. Well, we have a frequent guest, Sandy Cerami. He always uses these big words, and so after the show, I'll go to him and find out what the hell you're talking about.
So people are unable to do their jobs. Customers are unable to engage with you on their terms. And what happens as a result of that is when you execute better, you perform better. So that was just another one, by the way, is I call cut the crap. It's get rid of the stuff when the grunge in the inside of the business that prevents people from doing their jobs. And the language is really important here. Okay, this is not eliminate non-strategic activities. It's get rid of the crap, because that's what people I identify viscerally with. Okay, and a lot of my executive, colleagues had difficulty with the language I use, but the point is, it resonated with people because they knew it was crap. They knew it was dumb. They knew it was stupid. And so why not call it that? Okay, if it aids in execution. So that was one. The cleanse the inside thing was incredibly successful. Now, I don't have micro measurement stats for you, but what I can tell you is that piece, in terms of employee engagement, in terms of customer satisfaction, boom, right up on that one alone. And of course, I had to change the leadership and management to understand what we were doing and hold them accountable to delivering those kind of results. So that was one example. I got about 15 examples of little things like that I did.
Well, I definitely want to make our way through some of those. And as you were saying this, I'm sitting here thinking, and you just touched on it at the end there, man, if you get rid of all the crap, kill the dumb rules, for one thing, and I'm just thinking internal for a second here. I'm imagining what that does almost immediately to your culture when the employees in your team that you're working with all of a sudden, isn't dealing with nonsense, right? So I was very clear about this at the beginning. You got a very no nonsense approach. And when I follow you on all your social media, you basically what you just did in this first 10, 13 minutes here that we've been on. This is what his social media channels are like. So, I mean, he comes right, he cuts through all the bullshit and gets right to it. And I love it. And so, but I'm thinking about this, right? It's one thing to eliminate the dumb things internally, but when you eliminate the things that are just create aggravation, inconveniences, let's say externally on our clients, that also has an impact internally, because there's nothing worse as a teammate or an employee sitting there always having to answer question is, why do you guys do it this way? Why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? Well, that's our rule.
Yeah. You're so right. I have this notion in my head that when I was going through this, and I've tagged it upon reflection, I didn't call it this at the time, but it was trying to create a say yes environment. Now, what a say yes environment, I've written a lot about this on blogs and so forth and other podcasts. But what say yes means is to try and create an infrastructure and a machine that basically is leaning into the customer as opposed to leaning away. I mean, the reality is, as long as you're saying yes, okay, that's loyalty building. That's relationship building behavior. Saying no or saying that's our policy is going to create a lot of problems with respect to loyalty. Now, a lot of people would say, well, Roy, does that mean that you're going to say yes to everything? And the answer to that is no, it doesn't. But what it means is I'm going to say yes to 80% of what I said no to yesterday. That's the point. And we're going to move that yes barometer to the right so that we're creating policies, we're creating systems, we're creating procedures that allow frontline people to say yes more than they did yesterday. That's the point. And if we can do that, guess what happens? Again, Roy is strategically driven. It improves execution. It improves top line revenue. It improves loyalty, and it gets me closer to the billion. So all of these things are driven by the need to grow to the billion in sales. So creating a say yes culture is extremely customer sensitive. It's extremely loyalty building in orientation, and it's extremely differentiating. Okay, I want to make that point. Okay, most businesses out there say no. Shame on you. You shouldn't be saying no. You should be creating a culture that allows your frontline people to say yes. Okay, take the internal auditors into a room, whack them on the side of the head and say, we're going to say yes from now on. Build me a rule system that allows me to do that.
Yeah.
That's what we need leaders to do.
I got a good friend. His name is Todd Blue. He's a former guest on the show. Started a business, got into the car business, bought his first dealership. He knew nothing about, he's never been involved in automotive retail, bought his first store. Within 10 years, had 19 stores. There are dealers out there that have been doing this for 20, 30, 50 years that don't come close to that type of growth. And his entire, if you go back to that interview, literally said the exact same thing. I want to come from a yes mentality. He built his niche on the ultra luxury brands because he said that's what he knew. And he knew that clientele, what they demanded and expected, and he felt he could build a brand around that, and did an incredible job. But this yes mentality, I'm going to give you a story that happened to us a couple of years ago. So we're shopping. We've got the Business Bourbon and Cigars leadership retreats and mastermind breakout sessions and such. And so every spring we look for a southern state where we can hold this venue where the weather is going to be a little more consistent. And in this one particular spot, found a decent resort. It was nice. The salesperson was outstanding. Outstanding. Yes, we can do this. We can do that. We can do this. The support, the follow-up, phenomenal. Then we went down and we'd already booked. All right. Then we went down and now I've got the event coordinator, the production person, the person that's responsible for making sure our event, our leadership retreat goes as planned. And he's basically responsible now for my client experience, my experience as a client to him, right? We're going through this and I'm saying, we're going to want to make sure we do this and this and this. And I kid you not. Well, I was hit with a no attitude, and I don't need yes on things that can't be done. I want directness and explain to me why, but these were very easy things. And no. It was just this mindset that he came at us with. And then so finally I looked past it. A couple of weeks go by and literally something came up where he didn't do what he was supposed to do in terms of bookending our actual event dates with a day before and a day after in case people wanted to, if they're coming in from the West Coast, sometimes you got to come in a day earlier or whatever. And I wanted to make sure they had those room rates and blocked. This was a peak time for them. So, they wanted to sell the rooms at super high and not do our room rate. Well, we don't have the rooms and this and that. And I told management, I said, you can pull my event. I said, I don't care if I've got only 30 days to go. I'm moving it here. I said, I'm going to go to the Ritz-Carlton. And I told him, I said, the reason I'm going to go there is because they have a yes mentality. And I'm tired of dealing. And I went through the laundry list of stuff. So in the end, they pulled the guy from our thing. They did what we could do. They did what we asked them to do. And it all got handled. But I guess my point to that is this, to your point. When you come with it, if it could have been done, then why wasn't it just done? Why do I have to, as a client, have to go through that aggravation to get to the end result that they had the ability to do, obviously, or it wouldn't have gotten done. So there's nothing worse than making great client experience. Sometimes is like that duck on the water, right? It looks all calm on the surface, and then underneath the business is doing whatever it can to stay afloat and move along. But our clients don't need to be dragged underneath to see all that. They just want to see what's going on. And to your point, it's so easy to come to a yes. How do I get this done first and be helpful? And to me, it's just it's something a client, it's not just something they get and receive. It's something they feel.
Well, it's all about feelings. I mean, customer service is all about feelings. But I'll tell you what, I mean, the circumstance you just described happens every nanosecond in the world, unfortunately, because businesses are mediocre with respect to creating memorable experiences for customers. And it's a leadership issue. If you don't have leaders promulgating saying yes, okay, leaning in, being boring and keeping your promises, creating a service strategy that delivers core service 24/7 by 365, and then goes on to surprise and dazzle customers because that's the loyalty element. If you don't have that being done, people are going to invent their own definition. Okay. And most of that will be to avoid as opposed to lean in. And so my role as an audacious leader was to serve around. I created this thing called leadership by serving around. Okay. And that was all about going in the workplace, asking, how can I help? What are the things that are preventing you from doing your job, from preventing you from dazzling customers? And I would go away and fix them. And a lot of the issues were around the inability to take care of customers, which forced the say no behavior. And so I dove into those, obviously huge pinch points, which we had to work through. And we did over time. I'm not saying we got it 100%, but we made enough gains that loyalty was super, referrals were super, the business grew. And it's a simple little thing that I always say to leaders is, what are you doing to say yes? Give me your top 3 things. And if you can't write them down, shame on you.
Yeah, that's a great point. We got a good question from someone in the audience, Mia Walker, through LinkedIn. And by the way, depending on what social network they might be typing in questions, we use StreamYard to stream to all these networks. Some channels we see the questions. Some channels we have to go back after the show and then answer them online. But she brings up a great question. I think this probably goes through a lot of people's mind. She buys into the yes mentality, but she wants to know, how do you teach, or how do you have a sales professional or whoever, a client-facing person, strike a balance between having this yes mentality and wanting to say yes and do right, and then knowing when to say no, when no's the only option.
Okay, so the reality is, okay, that the landscape where you have to say no is relatively small compared to the landscape where you have the opportunity to say yes. Okay, so people say this all the time. Well, Roy, what if it's illegal? Come on. Well, that's not the point. The point is, right, to create an environment where the say yes space is a lot larger than what it is today. There will always be ethical standards. Okay, by the way, you need to be really clear on who's defining the ethical standards, first of all, because I'm a bit of a cynic, because I think that's used a lot of times as escape. Okay, I want to know exactly what is the standard and who is it that wrote it that I'm going to be breaking if I say yes. You don't accept things, okay, on the surface, right? Because what's going on here is the customer relationship. That investment is at stake when you make the decision in favor of something to say no. Okay, as I said earlier, there will always be times when you have to. Okay, all I would suggest is that treat the dynamics of saying no in a way that is much more say yes in terms of attitude and behavior. Okay, and then go back to the shop and say, hey, I had to say no for this reason. Am I right? Is it really an ethical standard? Okay, is it really something we can't change? Okay, so challenge the system. I got to tell you, there's a lot of stuff that is promulgated in organizations as being, you can't touch, this is sacrosanct, that is absolute bullshit. Okay, you need to have, as a salesperson, right, the fortitude and the guts to go back and challenge that stuff if you really want to say yes. It's painful. By the way, that's when I learned that pain, Scott, is indeed a strategic concept. Yeah. But hey, yeah, that's the only thing to do, and knock them down one by one, kiddo. That's all you can do. Keep moving the yard to yes.
Yeah, it reminds a sure tell that you're not challenging or you're okay with the status quo is when you hear the phrase, that's the way we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Well, the interesting thing to me is there are some people who actually believe if you continue to do things the way you did yesterday, things will work out differently tomorrow. And that's the definition of insanity in my view. Look at yesterday's relevance is today's irrelevance. You need to think about it that way. Why is that true? It's true because the world is changing so fast, right? It's highly much more uncertain, unpredictable, okay, staccato. It's just like crazy out there. What makes you think that yesterday is a recipe for tomorrow? Come on. You got to be audacious. You got to break away from that stuff. In fact, people would say to me, well, hang on a sec. Doesn't audaciousness create risk and discontinuity? And I say, no. No, as a matter of fact, audaciousness is one of the things that just might create continuity for you because it allows you to move and shake with uncertain, unpredictable events going on in the market. So I take exactly the opposite view. If you're not being audacious, you're in trouble because you're not ready for the big one. You're not ready for the body blow coming. You're just not. So you need to be audacious.
So you had just mentioned, you want your team or your employees coming, challenging the system. So as a leader, how do you create a space for employees to feel comfortable to do those and to challenge the processes and the rules?
So thank you for that, because I am not advocating go do your own thing. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. What I'm saying is innovate and be audacious around the strategy of the business. Okay. Towards executing the strategy of the business. So let me back up. This whole thing is based on strategic context, Scott. So what I did is I created what I call my strategic game plan, which we can go into if you want. It's different than what everybody else does, and it's highly related to execution. With that game plan, what I did is I translated it for every function in the organization. Okay, that's what you call non-delegation. I took on that as my strategically micromanagement character, and we went through the organization and translated our strategy. And what did it mean by sales? For sales, what are the things we have to take on? What are the things we have to give up? So I call that line of sight leadership. So I was a line of sight leadership. Why? Because I didn't want any dysfunction going on where people assumed that they were empowered to do their own thing. They're empowered to do their own thing within a context that we define that is relevant to the strategy of the business. You are not allowed to go outside of that, but you are allowed to try things, experiment things, be creative within that bubble, okay? Clearly understood bubble. That's the environment we created, okay? And say, okay, we want a crowd of triers in this organization. We want you trying things. Okay, we really do. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to hold people accountable to try. And so my direct reports had a trying objective. And I would say to them, it was kind of funny in a way. I would say, okay, if you're not trying at least 10 new things in a month, then we get a problem. We got a problem. Okay. And I want to know you can make mistakes contained within certain boundaries, but you can't make the same mistake twice. That means you didn't learn from it the first time.
Give me a simple view of on whatever it does to make your point or to articulate this. Give me a simple just example of here's what I mean by here's our process, and you can try different things, and here's the boundaries. Like, what are those boundaries? Give me an example of what those boundaries might look like.
Okay, so we created a strategy that was heavily oriented to building stronger relationships with customers. If you want a definition of sustainability from Roy, it's long-term customer relationships, right? And so we had that as a strategic imperative. Now, one of the things that we identified for customer service, and I'll use that as an example, that was related to that was what I call dazzling. Okay, if you can dazzle a customer, give them something they don't expect. If you can surprise the customer, they go, wow, and they love you for it. So one of the things I said to customer service is, fill your boots. with how to dazzle. I'm not going to give you a formula for how to dazzle. You know the customer, figure it out. And they did. And a lot of them had different ways of going about it. They would learn certain things about their clients, surprise them on that. And they want to do different things. And I said, I'm fine with that. And by the way, when you find one that really works, share it with your teammate, because we want to spread that virus. That's the virus we want to spread. So that's a simple little example. But the service rep wasn't empowered to solve a systems problem. Okay, they were empowered to solve an issue that they had that was highly related to an experience related to the strategy of the business. And I expected them to do that. That was their role, to step out and break away and do stuff. I mean, I had collections reps, accounts receivable, terrible job when you're trying to collect money. I had them trying different things, different approaches with customers in order to do it. Things were, that had not been tried before. So those things were okay. Okay. And so sales reps, the same issue. So I kind of went through the business as part of the line of sight exercise. And we actually defined the bubble. Okay. And people said, wow, there's a lot we can do in that bubble, Roy. And I said, I know. That's what I want you to do. Try within the bubble. Please go do it. So that's an example.
When you were hiring people, now you took over a company that already had pretty large employee base. How much? Talk to us a little bit about the what you had to do. Sometimes big ships they don't turn quick. So talk to me about like what you had to do to change that culture and to get buy-in, and what kind of resistance, or maybe you didn't get any resistance. What was that atmosphere like, and then how long did it take you to get that culture exactly where you wanted it?
Well, I never got it exactly where I wanted it. I mean, that's kind of like
we never do.
It's a moving target. But look, at the first thing we did is create a vision of a strategy for the organization. Okay, I want to keep going back to that. This isn't about tactics. This isn't about doing cool things, right? It's not what I'm talking about. This is about doing the fundamental things that drive execution in the business to get you the billion. That starts out with a strategy. So we built the strategy and we shopped it around. We shopped it around the organization. Now, the organization, to your point, was an interesting mix. Okay, what I would say old school and data-centric people, voice-centric, data-centric. Yeah. I knew it wasn't going to stay like that. It couldn't. We need to move to a data-centric, IP-based world, and we had to make that shift. But we weren't going to make the shift without a strategy. We need to sell a strategy, the growth strategy for the business. And part of that strategy was to build a set of values. What were the things that we valued? And those values were all about creating solutions, recovering from service mishaps, okay? Keeping our promises. I'm not talking about major kind of like strategic statements that, the pundits and the academics would promulgate. I'm talking about basic stuff that people could relate to. So with that strategy, we worked it through the organization and defined programs that we needed to support that strategy. And obviously the people piece was huge. Okay, because we had, as I said, a mosaic of people and skills. And so one simple question was, let's stratify the employee base in terms of data centricity versus voice. Then let's stratify it in terms of who wanted to go in with us in the data world, given the strategy that we've just got, and who didn't. The people who didn't, fine. They left the business. Okay. Yeah. The people that wanted to go but didn't have the capabilities were subject to either training, or if they couldn't be trained, they left. And so this was just like relentlessly driven. And so I would say, to make the initial phase sort of like even heavily leaning into the strategy, we were probably 5 to 6 years in. I mean, because we had a union environment, which made it even more difficult. I mean, for me, can you imagine? It's like the perfect storm. You got all these damn competitors coming at you. You got a business that's fundamentally got huge growth potential. You got union not wanting to change. You got people not wanting to change. You got stars wanting to rise. The perfect storm. And all we could do, we had a strategy. We had a highly execution focused leadership team, and we just kept driving it. with things that people cared about. And that's the other point I want to make. I mean, our employees had to feel the strategy, Scott, is not just intellectually understand it. They had to emotionally feel it. They had to believe that we were there to help them take care of customers because they wanted to. It's just that in the past, under monopoly environment, a lot of people just didn't care and blah, blah, blah. It was bad. And so it was painful. We needed relentless tenacity, and we just had to step by step by step by step. And as I say, upon reflection, it gives me goosebumps to see how much we actually were able to achieve with such a simple view of the world. Not complicated at all, just simple.
I love, and I hope people paid attention to what you just said. There's different thoughts out there. I think if you've got a great strategy and the right people buy in, you're always going to have people that resist change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's okay to be okay with letting them find another place to go be the same.
Look at I'll tell you what. I mean, it's such a good point. I think a leader's job is to help people find their way. Okay, that's our job. Now, hopefully their way is executing the strategy of the business to grow so that we can all benefit. But if their way is a different path, it's my job to help them find that. Yeah. And if it happens to involve another employer, that's okay. I'll do whatever I can to see that they land all right, because they're human beings. They're good folks. It's just it doesn't work. So this is not about admonishment, right? It's not about non-self-worth. It's about fit. That's it. Yeah. And that's our job. Our job is to help people find their way. And it actually, in a way, you know, I haven't thought about it this way before. An amazing customer service rep, their job is to help the customer find their way. Never thought about that before, but it really is their way in terms of solutions, their way in terms of an experience. So they're sort of experience creation people, and they never have thought about their role that way before.
You've got obviously a very good brand now. I'm curious, did you start to build this brand after you left this growth, this amazing accomplishment that you did, or did you start to develop it and create it while you were there? And the reason I asked that question, there's a lot of great managing partners that I know. There's a lot of great general managers. There's a lot of presidents, CEOs, that I think understand the importance of social media, maybe don't have a strategy as to how they're going to, they understand the importance of maybe building a brand, but they haven't figured out how they're going to use that brand quite yet. So I guess my question to you is, when did you start doing it? Let's answer that first, and then I'll follow up with my second question.
Well, I mean, I think the essence of Be Different or Be Dead, which is the title under which or over which Audacious Unheard-of Ways rises, because it's all part of the same thing. I've always been that person. I've always been. I can remember getting hell from my mother, okay, at a very young age, about stepping out as opposed to fitting in, coloring outside the lines as opposed to coloring inside the lines, being contrarian, going against the flow, asking way too many questions, asking why. I've always been that person. I never identified it as a brand at all until, you know, I sort of left the business world in 2002, actually, okay, after a very successful stint, and looked back upon it and said, well, what was that all about? And that led me to write my first book in 2009 called Be Different or Be Dead, Your Business Survival Guide. The whole notion of Be Different or Be Dead is around differentiation. And I've always been the person who was looking to be different, looking to stand out in ways that people cared about. Now, I'm not talking about narcissism, you guys. That's not what this is about. This isn't about being different for the sake of being different, right? This is about being different in a way that people care about. So it's serving them in a way that's unique relative to the other options they have available. And so I've been working this thing. I mean, I've written 7 books around the notion of be different or be dead. And the interesting thing to me, Scott, is every time I do something like this around the subject, people think it's new. People think the whole notion of differentiation, the way I approach it, is new. Well, the fact is, differentiation actually today rarely exists in the way I think it should. In fact, I define today's world in business as an undifferentiated world where everybody copies everybody. Everybody uses words like we're the best, we're better, we're number one, we're market leader. Nonsensical, doesn't mean anything. And they all look the same. And so
Yeah.
part of what I want to do with Be Different or Be Dead is try and drive a stake through that, create a chasm that says, hey guys, let's figure this out. I mean, you know what drives me crazy? You would think in a world that is more competitive now than it ever has been. Okay, customers have more power than they ever have. Technology is changing so rapidly, more rapidly than ever. You would think in that kind of a world that organizations would do a better job at differentiating themselves. And I got to tell you, they don't. We have some organizations saying they are in business to save our home planet. We are others saying that they want to inspire humanity in the air and on the ground. Now, those may be interesting values for your organization, but don't laud them out as a competitive claim of differentiation. And yet, that's what they do. And so, yeah, long-winded way of saying I've always been that person. I'm trying to change the conversation around the brand, and thank you for the shout out about that. I'm trying to shake people into believing that contrarianism, have done right in a way that people care about, is a valid position to take in the world. But it's not your definition of contrarian. It's what's required to do something that people care about. And that's always the context that I try and get people to identify with. So I've got the brand. I'm banging away at it, Scott, as you know, and hopefully changing attitudes one at a time.
So now you're building a public brand right now. But what people don't understand is you're building a brand, whether you're out on social media or not. And you spoke to something, be different or dead. And I'm big on not just having, a business mission statement. I've got my own personal mission statement, and I read it every day before I journal, every night before I journal. And what it does is it brings me back to understand who I am, what I stand for. And what that does is it's a conscious way for me to understand if this is who I am, then these actions either bring me closer to that, and there's actions that take me further away from that. And it's a conscious way to saying, why am I doing this? I should be doing more of this. And I guess where I'm going with this is this, the second part of that question. Because you did have a brand, you had Be Different or Dead. And so I'm sure you strike me as a person that lives that. When I sit there and say, get rid of the things, get rid of dumb rules, kill dumb rules, get rid of the crap and all that other stuff. This all aligns with Be Different, all right, or Be Dead. And so as you have that brand, whether you're advertising it, making it social networked ready, and as you're leading this company, if you're living it, your employees, your teammates felt it, they saw it in your actions. And so speak to the importance of having a strong brand as a leader when it comes to making audacious moves.
Yeah. And so again, like everything you need context, right, to define meaningfulness for either your organization or yourself. And so my context was always what we were trying to achieve. What personal brand is required of me to as a leader, right, to be able to create the end result and the end game that everybody wanted. Okay, so it wasn't just how do I feel, what do I feel I am? It's what do I have to be?
Yes.
What do I have to be? Okay, now most people don't approach branding that way. I mean, I'm a strategic guy. All right, branding is a strategic tool, and on a personal level, the whole Be Different or Be Dead thing is the way I breathe life into the approach that I have. It's the way I enable myself to be contrarian, because again, it's what do people care about and how can I be unique in serving those needs? And with that sort of a context, it allows me to do certain things that I do. I've created a differentiation tool, which I call the only statement. Okay, in other words, when most people are defining their competitive advantage as I'm the best one that, I'm the number one person that, none of which can be ever measured or proven. Okay, that's the kind of world of undifferentiation that I was talking about earlier. In the face of that, I created my own approach to differentiation. It was called the only statement. It's really simple. It says, we are the only ones who. I am the only one that. Okay, so it's a binary thing. It either exists or it doesn't. You can measure it easy, okay? And it's got to be relevant, i.e. it addresses something that people care about, and it's got to be true. In other words, you're doing it all the time. And so I got a whole show around how to build only statements, and that's really fun. So maybe we can do that sometime. So that's what I did. I had to create my only statement. And I say to people, your brand isn't about what you think you are. Your brand is about what other people see who you are. Okay. Yeah. And so here's my only statement. Scott, can I read it to you?
Please.
Okay. Roy Osing is the only author, entrepreneur, and executive leader who delivers practical and proven, audacious, unheard of ways that no one else talks about to build high-performing businesses and successful careers. There's absolutely no one else out there doing that. So when people say to me, well, Roy, what makes you special? Boom, out comes the only statement. When people say, Roy, I want you to pitch, a consulting business. What are you all about? Boom, out comes the only statement. So it's an elevator speech of distinctness. Yeah. It's precision to your promise, Scott, is what it is. It's not this mumbo jumbo USP stuff. Well, I'm really good at conflict management. Who cares? Okay. What I want to know is how you're unique in satisfying what people want. That's the purpose of the brand. And that's how I live it. That's how I live it.
It's about becoming, like you said, it's not what you currently, it's about becoming a higher version of you. It's about becoming your best self, right? In terms of what you're trying to accomplish. And so for me, I want to live a very fulfilling life. I want to have a lot of passion in what I do, and things that used to excite me. And people always talk about what's your why, well, your why can change over time. Yeah. And the first half of my business career, I had a very, very specific niche, and it drove me. And I wanted to be viewed as providing our clients with by far the best that we could do, better than anyone else, whether it was more professional, better support, better results, which in marketing obviously is a top priority for clients. But there came a point where things that used to excite me became very mundane to me. And what I noticed, my why changed. And so, I went through and I did a very similar exercise. And to me, I believe I'm the best in the world at uniting people that have great vision, that have diverse skill sets, that want to achieve greatness. And I do that by helping them discover whether it's new business opportunities, new ideas, new breakthroughs. And I facilitate these things. Yeah. And so that's my elevator spit. and so
look at there's something missing in the general approach to universal selling propositions and brands and so forth, because they tend to be the conversation that's suggested is all about the problem that you're solving and how are you solving that problem in a unique way. The piece that's missing is how are you different?
Yes.
Okay, how are you different? And that's the tough piece. This is not a walk in the park stuff. Let me give you an example of my Be Different or Be Dead brand in my personal life. Okay, so I'm a grandfather. You've probably noticed. I have 4 amazing grandkids. Okay, 4 amazing.
You can educate me on that too. I'll be one in August.
So many years ago, well, not that many years ago, my objective all along was I'm going to be the Be Different Papa. Okay, always has been my purpose. I'm going to do things with my grandkids that they will always remember as being, well, there's Papa. He's out on the edge. He's doing stuff. We're doing crazy things. He's crazy, whatever. So my ancestry is Norwegian. Okay. So I've always wanted to promulgate Norway to my grandkids and try and get them away from, the other influences like Italian and all that kind of stuff. Right. So my objective was, how can I get them over to Norway? Well, one of the things we did is we've taken each one of them on a cruise, just themselves, with us to Norway to experience. But the really thing, which they loved, and that was a little different.
That would be cool.
But the key thing that they always remember is I created a club. The club was called the Trollites Club because, Norwegians and trolls, those are our respected beings, right? In mythology, etc. So I created this club called the Trollites. I was a president, and my oldest granddaughter was a vice president. And we would meet every week, and we create a teepee, right, with towels and with everything else. So, and we would have a meeting. It was the Trollites meeting, and the agenda was really simple. Let's talk about the things we should do in the world as Trollites. What do you think we should do? Should we go to England and create havoc? What do you think? So we would have these conversations, and they would last an hour. Everybody wanted to be president, blah, blah, blah. They remember that. That's an example of Roy being different in a way that they cared about. These kids loved the storytelling. They loved the myths behind it. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of living a brand. It's not just something that you do at work. It's something you do in your life. But again, I will say, it has to be about what some people care about. It's all based on subservient behavior. Okay, it's not about what you think you should do. It's about what they need you to do, and you do it in a different way. Trollites Club, dude.
I love it. Hey, so when I found out I, was going to be a grandfather, I've got another friend. We kid each other about age all the time. So I knew that he was going to have a lot of content to come at me, but I have to tell you, I'm excited in the sense that I want to be the legacy. I want to be that grandfather that generations talk about when I'm gone. In other words, this was this. I want to be that guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. So a lot of alignment there. So let me ask you, how do you approach marketing and sales strategies when it comes to making audacious moves?
Well, I mean, so one of the things that, again, the context is the strategic plan of the organization. I keep going back to, you want to figure out how to behave. You look up to your strategy. That's the basis of informing. So in our case, we had a strategy that was highly build relationships, right? In orientation, create experiences, et cetera, et cetera. What that called into question from a marketing sales point of view was the whole flogging, I call it flogging products notion. Because up to then, the traditional approach, and it still is you go flog products. You push your wares. You're trying to sell as opposed to create a buying experience where you don't have to sell, okay? And so one of the biggest things we did is got rid of this whole notion of flogging products, and we started to integrate creating experience as part of the sales comp plan, using report cards that customers would actually fill out based on their perception. Well, that created all sorts of interesting agony in the sales force. So you mean you're really going to talk to our customers about how well we're doing? You bet. And they're going to tell us, right? We're going to have a report card with 6 things on it, behavioral related. And that's going to convince me one way or the other whether you got the potential to help me deliver to the kind of revenue growth we had. So moving away from products into this experiential context was huge. The other part of that for me was getting people to think that the world that we need is beyond need satisfaction. Okay, because need satisfaction is a world that everybody competes on. They compete in trying to satisfy needs. Well, the reality is most needs are satisfied. Okay. And so I came up with this idea that said, if I can get beyond needs and start talking about what people care for, what they desire, what they lust for, what they crave, that space is a space that's rich with premium price opportunities and no competition. And so moving marketing and sales into defining what their clients craved was huge, because in order to find that out, you don't walk up and say, Scott, what do you crave? You have a conversation, right? That allows us to get to know one another, and I get to know some secrets about you that you let me know because you trust me. Those are relationship building behaviors. And so that whole thing was extremely, extremely important. And it allowed us to do some value packaging around cravings. It allowed us to build a service recovery strategy, okay, that with the secrets that we learned from customers allowed us to do some pretty cool things when in fact we screwed up. So there was all sorts of inner relationships between the cravings research, if you will, and actions that we eventually took when we had to. So those are just a couple of one other thing. Like I hate benchmarking, okay? Let's just get this out on the table. You cannot tell me you're being innovative and creative if you're copying other people and copying other organizations. And so it drives me freaking insane, okay? Get rid of the copying mentality. Take on the creative mentality. Take Google and throw it out, okay? Or do something different than what Google tells you everybody else is doing. So I said that to the marketing and sales guys. I said, I said, when I'm asking you how to be creative within our strategic plan, I don't want you ever to tell me, here's how other people do it. I'm not interested in that. I mean, and yet everybody does it, Scott. Everybody copies everything.
Even when you try to educate and teach and emphasize not to do it, it's very difficult. It's the biggest challenge when we do our leadership retreats and we do our mastermind breakout sessions. Yeah. We go over this specific thing a lot. And finally, we had one leader stood up and says, we do not want to copy best practices. First off, a lot of the best practices are crap. We want to be industry leaders, industry leading. We want industry leading breakthroughs. That's what we're really trying to find when we do our stuff. Is I want breakthroughs. Breakthroughs make people wealthy. It doesn't mean along the way we're not getting incrementally better. That happens, but when you're sitting here, innovation, all right, isn't just it, you're right. It's not copying something. But I want to go back to something you said. I loved it. This mindset of we're not selling products, we're selling a client experience, their experience. And then what do our clients crave? All this works together. If you're packaging things and you're discovering what they crave, right? And then you're trying to create an experience, which usually is involved in the craving part. But go right back to the very beginning of our discussion here. Kill dumb rules. Get rid of the crap. What you're probably finding, the more dumb rules you kill, the more crap you get rid of. You're creating a lot better experiences, and you're probably solving some cravings.
Boom. You got it. So, simple shit, right? Simple shit.
That I'll absolutely love it. Maybe I need to have you come in and help moderate my my mastermind stuff.
I'd love to. Anything I can do to help.
So listen, I'm serious. I'm going to reach out. You've talked a lot about strategy. I think there are a lot of, and I want to be respectful of your time. You okay with we go a little bit over this hour? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you? Great business leaders have to think long-term in their strategy, but they have to have short-term strategy as well. But I think the majority of business leaders are so reactive, and everything is short-term thought. Everything is short-term action. Discuss the importance of maintaining a long-term strategic view or plan, and how does it fit with making all these audacious moves? How do you balance that?
I love it. What a great question, because you're not expecting the answer I'm going to give you. The kind of leader that you just described is what I would call is a tactically driven leader. And I agree with you. Always reacting to things in the short term and coming up with a tactical response is not the behavior that is required. But I must tell you, I am not a fan of 5-year plans. And the reason for that is the 5th year never shows up.
Never.
right? Never shows up. And so my process is what I call planning on the run. And what that really means is we set out a 24-month plan. It's called a strategic game plan. The horizon is 24 months. Why 24 months? Just because you can see it. It forces you into execution. Because again, I'm the execution dude, right? If you pick a 5-year plan, and if I don't get it next year, I can always put it off to the 5th year. And so you get the perennial hockey stick stuff going on. And so I look at a 10-year plan as 5 successive 24-month execution plans. That's how I get to the long run. And the reason for that, and it's not that we're stupid. It's just that we have no idea, generally speaking, what's going to happen 36 months out. So let's create a plan that allows us to effectively execute and measure over the next 24 months. We'll constantly renew it and we'll tweak it as we learn from our execution. Because I don't believe there's any silver bullets out there. I don't believe that leaders, there have been a couple of exceptions, but for most of us mortals, we're not in the silver bullet production mode as leaders, okay? We're just not. And so we set this thing in place. It's literally 24 30-day periods. And I call them that because it forces you to think, well, what's going on now, measure what's going on now, learn from what's going on now, and tinker it and revise it on the run. So that's my approach to planning. You earn the right to get to 10 years by being successful every 24 months. That's it. That's the only planning process that will work in today's world, in my experience.
So smart. I think of our IT team here, our software, our coders. It's what they do. Here's the goal. Here's the product we want to build or the solution that needs to be built out. This is going to take us 6 months to build. And you know how they plan it? So 6 months would be the 24-month that you just explained. But they do it in 2-week sprints. So they sit there and say, this is what to get at the end of this 6 months to end here. Here's our map over every 2 weeks. And that's what they're doing. Every 2 weeks, they're hitting those objectives and things like that. But it also reminds me of something Coach K said, the former head coach at Duke basketball, who, won 5 national championships, obviously one of the best to ever do it. When he would get into March Madness, into the tournament, he never looked at the 6 games that it required to win. He said it was 3 2-game tournaments. That's what he said. He said there every week I have a 2-game tournament we need to win. And he goes, that was the focus, and we approached it that way.
That's exactly why I call it a game plan. It's a strategic game plan. Look my view of strategic planning is really simple. It's like, let's head west if you happen to be east. If you're on west, it's let's head east. The reason that's a valid plan is I'm not really sure whether I'm going to end up in Vancouver or San Francisco or whatever, but I will discover that, okay, by innovating along the way within a planning context that I've created, okay, that doesn't involve, gazillions of dollars to create, doesn't involve 6 months to put together, doesn't involve subject matter experts other than the leadership team and the business. In 2 days, you get your strategic game plan and you're executing it on the 3rd day. And that's the only way I've discovered that you can actually, create meaningful progress in a world that's highly uncertain and unpredictable. And you're constantly getting hit by things that you haven't expected. Strategic game plan is gold. That's one of the kind of audacious things that it occurred to me really early on in my leadership career, because the planning pundits could not help me. The blue oceans don't help me because it doesn't help me execute. I hate them. I did a whole show with a buddy of mine in Australia about why I don't like blue oceans. Check it out. But I'm a practical guy. If I can't execute it, I don't want to talk about it, because most oceans are red. Okay. They're red with competition. Okay. 99% of the world consists of red oceans. Why don't we spend our time helping people navigate through red oceans? That's what I do. The blue ocean, nah.
Let me ask you this question though. If you were starting a business and you're big on being different, it's one thing to coach people through a blue ocean. I agree with you. I'd rather coach the people in the red ocean because there's a lot more of them. But but if I'm starting a business, I kind of like that blue. I like that blue ocean. Yeah, especially if I got a
Yeah.
good thing there.
And I coach new CEOs all the time, and we actually use my process. Okay, and forget about the label. Okay, forget about whether it's blue, pink, yellow, whatever. Okay, the issue is you need a 24-month game plan. We can
Yep.
do that, and we can create an only statement for you. We can create, a strategy that allows you to execute with precision and allows you to stand out and be different. Like a lot of them will say to me, they'll show me their idea, and my first question is, how is it different than everybody else's? And the reality is, it's not. So I say to them, stop. Don't spend any more money. I don't care about the technology. I don't care about the gee whiz bang sexy stuff that you think it's got. If it's not different, you're dead. So let's take a step back and do this right. We're going to create a strategy. You're going to have a competitive differentiation claim that is unique, powerful, pops. You're going to have a brand. Let's do it the right way. Okay. And we'll do it in a couple of days. And I'll help you along the way. Bang. These guys, they go through this and they go, wow. I mean, I've never thought about the business world this way. And that's because we don't teach them, Scott. We teach them the academic treatise way of doing it. And it doesn't work. In my experience, it doesn't work. So I say, put the textbook down, dude. Let's talk about some other stuff. Put the textbook down.
I have the luxury of talking to a lot of CEOs, business owners, it's even the really good ones. And when you really get down to it and ask, why should someone buy from you? And or, what makes you different, to your point, people really struggle with it.
Well,
They can't articulate it.
Well, that's why I say the world is right now undifferentiated. It's because of that.
Yeah.
And in many ways, the current textbook world doesn't help because they rely on traditional academic approaches to creating universal selling propositions, which are hogwash, and all this kind of stuff. They're not built. Okay, they're not built. And by the way, the people that promulgate them have never run $1 billion a year business. So they're built, okay, from a theoretical construct.
Yeah.
I'm not saying theory isn't important, but at some point, the idea needs to degenerate into a crude deed, okay? It needs to degenerate into action, okay, that is carried out by people who have fire in their guts, that's created by leadership. That doesn't come from a textbook, my friend. It doesn't.
So I'll tell you, I need to introduce you to our president at J&L Marketing, Jamil Zabaneh. You guys would get along to perfection. He would be sitting there, see, Scott, see, I told you.
Awesome. I'm here to help, my friend. I'm here to help.
I appreciate it. Is there anything we didn't discuss today that you feel like, all right, this needs to be said?
No, I just want to leave with this very, very passionate plea, okay, around this whole issue of differentiation, okay, because I want people to really think about this and examine what's in front of you and ask yourself the question, does it answer? Why should I do business with you? Why should I hire you and not anybody else? Why are you so special in a way people care about? I like that conversation to go on, not a conversation that says, what do the other people do and how can we be like them?
So wait a minute, Roy. So we're family owned and been in business for 30 years. That's not good enough to be different?
No. Hey, listen, congratulations that you have been. Okay. Now let's move beyond that. And let's try and create something that's going to keep you here for another millennia. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Well done, Scott. Well done. But now we need to move on.
All right, folks. That's a wrap for today's episode of Move, Crush, Count. We explored audacious moves in a lot of different areas: leadership, branding, marketing, sales, client experience, business growth, and the strategies I think we talked about, even, I mean, heck, we even got into the personal side and career and personal growth. So
Boom.
huge stuff. I cannot, this is Roy Osing, everybody. I cannot thank him enough for coming on here. You're probably one of only, I know of one other guest, two other guests. So you're one of three total people that have been on the show that have run a $1 billion business and reached that level of success. So appreciate you. You're in rare air. Not a lot of people out there like you. So listen to this man.
There are a
Check
lot of
him
people that
out.
don't like me.
Hey, but if there were a lot of, if there was a lot of people like you, you wouldn't be different.
Things.
So I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to thank the MCC Nation for tuning in. We've got, and if people are watching on our live stream, we've got your website scrolling at the bottom, bedifferentorbedead.com. Please check out Roy. Go visit him there. And as I mentioned earlier, he's on all the different social platforms. You owe it to yourself to follow him. It's not, he's not on there just obviously selling. All right. But he does it in a way that even if you don't buy anything, you're going to learn a lot if you follow him and make sure you subscribe to his content. So outstanding stuff. Thanks again. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers. There's a lot of people I think will get a lot out of this episode. Make sure you subscribe to movecrushcount.com. Go there, visit, subscribe. Also subscribe to us on YouTube. That way you can catch up on all our past episodes. You never miss a future one. I want a special thank you to our sponsor, J&L Marketing, the digital and direct marketing agency that helps you outsmart your competition so you can stop trying to outspend them. So check out their innovative approach and how they'll help you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. Until the next episode, everyone, thank you for tuning in.